we can start and go next to next session, COVID conundrums. Chairperson, may I request our chairperson, Professor R.N. Sarkar, Dr. Dolon Chapa Modok, and Dr. Professor Nilati Sarkar to come into dais.
Should we start
now?
We have three very interesting topics here. First one will be delivered by Professor Jyotirmoy Pal. He doesn't need any introduction to our API members. 70-year-old obese diabetic male with COPD and COVID-19. Jyotirmoy, are you ready? Jyotirmoy is our dean-elect. That is a new addition.
Good afternoon, respected chairperson, all my colleagues, friends, teachers and juniors. In last 1.5 years, it was a nightmare for the mankind. 31st December 2019 was a black day for the mankind. China first noticed increased incidence of pneumonia and increased death. By next 1 to 2 weeks, the whole genome sequence was unrevealed, and it was named as a COVID-19 infection. Finally, in the March 2020, WHO declared it a pandemic to the puzzled world, having no medicine, no vaccine, no structured guideline to combat the new pandemic, that is the COVID-19 pandemic. Anyhow, we passed the 1.5 years. Till today, in India, more than 35 million confirmed cases till today in India, and approximately 5 lakh deaths till today. Still, apart from few steroid, heparin and others, we have no real antiviral to combat this virus. So first, what is coronavirus? So if the infection will go on for next few years also, so how we can best manage apart from the preventive aspect, that is the vaccination. So let us see what is coronavirus. In brief, it is the enveloped positive sense single stranded RNA virus. Its genome has a 14 coding zones that code the 16 non-structural protein, 9 accessory protein and 4 structural protein. So there are 4 variants: alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and COVID-19 basically belongs to the beta variant. And there are 7 subtypes. In 1960 in India, coronavirus 1, 2, 3, 4 was detected, and almost all Indian has antibody against this previous 1, 2, 3, 4 coronavirus. There is a epidemic of the SARS-1 MERS, and this is called the SARS-2 COVID-19 virus pandemic. So to understand our known enemy, inside there is a RNA. Surrounding this, there is a nucleocapsid, and there is a more 3 important protein. One is the spike protein, that is the 2 subunit S1 and S2. One is membrane protein and one is envelope protein. S1 protein or the structural protein, spike protein, that is the most important protein. It has the two domain. One is the S1, that is the receptor binding domain. That means through S1 it binds to the ACE receptor, and when the S1 subunit bind to the ACE receptor, there is a conformational changes of the S2 that help to enter virus to the through the host cell. So S1 and S2 component, one is the receptor binding site, another help in fusion of the virus or entry of the virus to the host cell. And spike protein is a glycoprotein coating that helps, basically that is responsible for the poor immunological response of the host, and also prevent the spike protein from the effect of the neutralizing antibody. Other 2 protein, the nucleocapsid protein that from the capsule around the RNA, and one membrane protein that is responsible for the nutrient entry within the host cell, and there is one envelope protein. They form the viral envelope with the M protein. So most important is the spike protein. Apart from this, there are another 3 structural protein. So regarding the brief of the life cycle that I told, that because virus is attached by the spike protein, and then enter within the host cell, and within the host cell, by the process of translation and transcription, some the protein that is the capsular protein and the RNA is formed, and that is clipped accordingly, and the whole virion again formed, and the cell host cell is ruptured, again the virus come out and attack the new host cell. This is in brief of the life cycle. So our target, or the target of the medical world, is to prevent the fusion of coronavirus with the host cell, that is the spike protein and receptor. That is the target zone of medicine or vaccine, whatever maneuver, or whatever the application we do, their basic target is this zone. So when the virus is infected, there is basically three stages. One is the early viremia stage. There is the viral replication. Viral enter within the host cell. There is a proliferation. Or at this step, patient is basically asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic. Then is come to the pulmonary phase. At this phase, there is the lung involvement, and patient develop the dyspnea and oxygen requirement started. We get the opacity or lesion in the chest or HRCT. After the pulmonary stage, then come the hyperinflammatory stage. At this stage, there is no role of virus, but due to the viral affection, there is a lot of cytokine release, and that cytokine causes the damage of the different tissues, the lung, heart, kidney, and others. So stage 1 and stage 2 basically viral affected, and stage 3 basically the complement and other cytokine related. So if we want to target the virus, we have to target at stage 1 and stage 2. If you try to modulate the immune phenomena, we have to target the stage 3. So the cases what we have perceived or we have seen in the world, basically we can divide into two categories. One category is asymptomatic and mild case. What is happening now? Patient is getting cough, fever, something, and thinking it is influenza, not doing any test, and patient is cured. And another category, patient is a high incidence of death. These cases are basically the comorbid patients. Because of the comorbidity, one very important comorbidity is the age. If you see this is a study done from the Pondicherry. If you see, there is a more death above 45. More than 60% death is above 60, and almost 90% death if the age is above 45. So age is the most important comorbidity. So aged patient mostly die. Younger patient basically suffer from asymptomatic, does not require much attention from the medical point of view. And if you consider the other comorbidity, you see this chart, the more death are basically in the comorbid condition. So comorbidity and aging process is the most important cause of the death in COVID infection. Otherwise, this infection go on like the influenza, just simple cough and fever and some constitutional symptom, and subside spontaneously. So in this category, you see the asthma, hypertension, obesity, diabetes. That is a 3 to 4 time increase in the incidence of hospitalization or ICU admission or mortality. If you see this chart, the death is almost, if you consider one thing age related, if we incorporate age with the comorbidity, you see just take one category between 65 to 74 years. Hospital patient is aged, at the same time have multiple comorbidity. So rate of hospitalization is 40 times than the younger counterpart. Death is 1,300 times than the younger counterpart. That means when the comorbidity added with the age, the rate of hospitalization, particularly ICU admission and death, increases in an exponential way. So that is why the topic is given. If the patients come with you, with the aged patient, with diabetes, with hypertension, how we can best manage at the point when we have no antiviral therapy. So, regarding the treatment policy till 1.5 years, what we have achieved, we can divide into this part, that in the early symptomatic phase, there is no medicine is required. But when the patient early symptomatic but not hospitalized, at this point, the world is thinking whether we can do something or not. So at this point, when patient is early symptomatic, what we can do, we can prevent the fusion of the virus with the host cell, so that there is no entry of the virus within the host cell, and that will prevent the viral replication. But when the patient is already admitted, required the oxygen, at this moment, either we have to give you the immunomodulator in the form of dexamethasone, or we have to give some remdesivir that is under question or the efficacy, and also tocilizumab and others drug. But most important is the dexamethasone when patient is admitted and patient requires the oxygen. So we are trying to develop some medicine that will effective in the early phase, that is in the viral replication phase, that by maneuver we can prevent the viral fusion with the host cell. So regarding the immunity, that means we have to give the immunity against the microbe to the host. So immunity basically divide into two categories. One is the active immunity, one is passive immunity. That is universal for all infection that we apply for case of tetanus, rabies, whatever you say. There is a two type of immunization, two type of immunity we can provide. One is the active immunity by vaccination, another by passive immunity, that is by immunoglobulin. So regarding the passive immunity, when the vaccination came in 2021, but 2020 when the vaccination was not in the hand of the medical fraternity, that time it was thought, because when you are infected with the COVID virus, there is the antibodies formed as a natural procedure. So when this antibody is usually considered protective, so the world thought if the recovered patient's plasma that contains a lot of neutralizing antibody can be given to the patients who is just in early phase of infection, whether this can prevent or neutralize the virus. Because this type of thought was helpful in case of Ebola infection and H1N1 infection. So ICMR, like WHO, is conducted study in 39 centers of India, but from this convalescent plasma, ultimately no benefit was found. The survival benefit was not recorded from the convalescent plasma, because in convalescent plasma, not only neutralizing antibody, there is a lot of non-neutralizing antibody and other antibody that is related to other infection. So having less neutralizing antibody and patients, I told patient is a glycoprotein coating of the spike protein. So in many patients, the immunogenicity is low. So in spite of having infection of the COVID, the patient developed the less neutralizing antibody. That is why in convalescent plasma study, it came to a failure. So ICMR finally discouraged the use of convalescent failure. Then came the monoclonal antibody. That is a more specific neutralizing antibody. What is neutralizing antibody? That is basically that prevent the infection or pathogenicity. So here the neutralizing antibody will be such antibody that is effective against the spike protein, because spike protein is the most important culprit of the virus that is responsible for the virus entry. So neutralizing antibody means antibody against the spike protein. So world thought to develop the monoclonal antibody against the spike protein. The Hansen et al. First developed the antibody against the spike protein, and he developed from the animal and from the recovered patient. The initially FDA given the emergency approval to use such a monoclonal antibody. But again, the concern was when the antibody was applied to a single site of spike protein, there is the emergence of the resistance mutant, because when you are trying to put the virus under pressure, so they are trying to come out, and by doing the mutation, they try to avoid the impact of the neutralizing antibody. So monoclonal antibody against a single site of the spike protein was not proceed much in the treatment viewpoint or got any success. Then came the concept of the cocktail therapy, because we apply the attack from the multiple site. We apply this policy in case of HIV infection, in case of hepatitis B infection, because if we can attack the multiple site like the HIV, one is NRTI, one is NNRTI, two side, one, if we can attack, there can be less emergence of the resistance. This is the basic concept, and this policy is applied in many of the viral infections. So world now then proceed to the development of the cocktail antibody, that means neutralizing antibody, but targeting in the different site. So first, this concept cocktail antibody, neutralizing antibody acting in the different two sites was first successfully applied in Ebola infection. When it was developed in USA, the cocktail antibody against the COVID virus, the Donald Trump first got the cocktail antibody, and the world was motivated to see that Donald Trump got the cocktail antibody, and it became the popular. So two cocktail antibody, casirivimab and imdivimab, two are to form from the recombinant DNA technology. These are basically IgG having the high affinity but as non-competitive. They are basically heterotetramer, that means two light chain and two heavy chain, and they have a specific affinity towards the S protein, and they are produced from by the recombinant DNA technology from the hamster. So how do you work? So yeah, I told there is a two component. One is a casirivimab or the imdivimab. So imdivimab basically attack the receptor binding domain. One receptor binding domain is attacked by imdivimab. So there is another, when this site is blocked by this antibody, there is another overlapping portion. That overlapping portion non-competitively is bound by casirivimab. That means two site is blocked. When the two site is blocked by the two different antibody, the chance of mutation is become the very less. So emergence of mutant strain, when we are applied two antibody together, it become more effective than using the monoclonal antibody or antibody against a single site. So this is the mechanism of action. That means one antibody blocked to the receptor binding domain, and there remain the another non-overlapping portion that is blocked by the another antibody, and both have the synergistic action. So when two site is blocked, the conformational changes that happens to the S2 domain, that is prevented. So viral entry to the via pore with the help of S2 domain is prevented. So that leads to the less virus replication or host cell infection with the virus. So where there is evidence, so initially there is a in vitro evidence that neutralizing activity against the spike protein of the pseudo virus of different mutant strain. It is seen, it is effective. No change in the concentration is required. Then came the non-clinical studies. That is, the studies are done. The hamster are infected with the COVID-19 vaccine, and this drug was applied, that is to antibody, and the rapid clearance of the viremia. So with the success of the in vitro studies and the non-clinical studies, as the animal study, then the world proceed to go to the human studies. So human study, phase 1, phase 2 study, I am not mentioning due to short of time. Just I am going to the some of the phase 3 trial. So this is one trial is done. The combined there is a combined combination of the two cocktail therapy, and this reduce the risk of COVID-19 related hospitalization, death from any cause. That is more important. Like vaccine prevent the rate of hospitalization and death. At the same time, antibody and use of the cocktail antibody prevent the hospitalization, oxygen requirement, death for any cause in COVID-19 infected patients. So time short, I am not going to the study. You see, compared to the placebo, there is a less hospitalization, death. The black is the placebo, yellow is a patient getting the combination of antibody. So treatment study told the summary that treatment should be given as soon as possible, particularly in the viremic phases, even not in the pulmonary phase. After detection, the COVID-19 maximum duration within the 10 days, because after 10 days, the virus not remain in the body. It is a cytokine that damage your tissues. So another very important study, there is a phase 2 study done on the outpatient basis. That means the patient does not require oxygen but virally infected and mild symptomatic. That is that means patient is the early stage. In that patient, two group of made, and 600 milligram. In another group 1200. That means in one group total 1200, and another group 2400 milligram drug was given. It is seen that both group, the rate of hospitalization reduced in the first group 70%, but doubling the dose, risk reduction was only 71%. That means doubling the dose, there is no added benefit. That is why nowadays we are giving 600 milligram and 600 milligram, not 1200 milligram and 1200 milligram. So basically high risk persons, they are given this drug because they are more vulnerable to hospitalization, ICU admission or death. In this country, high risk is defined by the ICMR. The age is above 60%, obesity, having the different cardiovascular diseases, diabetes mellitus, chronic kidney disease, different immunosuppressive condition, and clotting liver disease. But this drug should not be given in a patient that requires the oxygen, or patient is already hospitalized in as a severe or moderate case, or patient required oxygen due to COPD, now the oxygen requirement has increases. So in this category, there is no need of using this drug because patient is already. So in the previous study, the rate of infection, rate of others hypersensitivity reaction is almost negligible in both of the group. So in summary, the investigation antibody cocktail reduced the hospitalization rate 70% in non-hospitalized patient with COVID-19 infection, and secondary endpoint was to whether this reduced the viremia and shortened the total duration of the illness. It is seen as a primary endpoint, it reduced the rate of hospitalization death, but as a secondary endpoint, it has reduced the symptom by another 4 days. So 600 was the optimum dose. So finally, the recovery study is very important study. The randomly allocated, one group got they received the standard therapy, another group received the standard therapy plus this cocktail antibody, and it is seen that the patient was seronegative, they are mostly benefited from this use of the antibody. You see, in the seronegative usual caregiving, their mortality was 30%, but those group getting the cocktail therapy with usual care, their mortality was 14%. Same the rate of duration of the hospitalization and use of the ventilation. So this study has proved that if this cocktail therapy is applied in an early stage, there can be a reduction of the mortality by 20%. That is very significant. So there is another study. I'm not going to that study. I'm coming to the directly to. So after the success or the publication of this study in 21st November 2000, US FDA given approval of this drug, and India got the approval for the emergency use on the 5th May 2021. So after using last few months of using this drug, the success rate was quite impressive, and on behalf of Government of West Bengal, we conducted a study. I was in the investigator team, and when we have applied, there was a no death, no hospitalization. Almost we have used up to the 35 cases we have used, but no case was admitted after getting the cocktail. 20 minutes. Cocktail antibody. So even the resistance strain, there is no increase of the drug concentration is required. So so I am coming to the COVID guideline. There is a different guideline that though not ICMR has recommended the drug to use. So summary of the use: if the age is above 12 years and weight is more than 40 kg in laboratory proven case of COVID-19 infection, this drug can be used 600 milligram both, and to use the two drug to be dissolved in 250 milligram of NS and to be infused over 20 minutes, and after infusion 1 hour to be observed. That is mild, few cases only hypersensitivity reaction, but no adverse reaction death was observed in the large trial that has been conducted. But if the patient required the oxygen therapy or hospitalized or required the increased oxygen rate, they are contraindicated, should not be used this drug. No really, though the drug dose modification, hepatic and renal diseases has been observed, and no known proven or significant drug interaction also observed in the with this drug. As a use in the special population, pregnancy has a limited data, but antibody definitely passes through the placental barrier. So this can be used in pregnancy if mother requires. In lactation, it can be used. In geriatric population, there is no change in the pharmacokinetics because it is not excreted through renal, and renal disease and hepatic disease, no dose adjustment is required. So handling should be kept in the 2 to 8 hours. In the first day, if you cannot, because 2 patient dose is given in a single bottle, if you do not get the single patient, if you keep in the 2 to 8 degree, by 48 hours, you can use to the another patient. And thirdly, there is no contraindication. This line is very important, though it is a complement to the vaccination. It is not the alternative to the vaccination. And even if patient is vaccinated, there is no contraindication of using this cocktail. So this drug in future may be beneficial or may be helpful, because even after getting the vaccination, people are getting infected, and particularly the high risk patient, there is a chance of having hospitalization, ICU admission, death. So even the post vaccination stages, if the patient come very early in the viremic stage, this drug can be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyotirmoy. Now, you said just that those who had neutralizing antibody, they don't get that benefit. So if the patient was previously vaccinated, what will be the outcome?
If there is a no contraindication, if the patient is already vaccinated, if the still patient will become infected with this infection, because vaccination does not provide you the 100% protection, only reduce the rate of hospitalization. So in that case, in the early phase, this cocktail can be used, because the amount of neutralizing antibody after vaccination is not universal, because what I told, the spike protein has a coating for the glycoprotein. So in some of the patient, antibody response is not very good. So that is why in that case, cocktail, even after post-vaccination patient, if infected, come in the viremic phase, this antibody cocktail may be beneficial.
What is the price of this?
1,04,000 for two.
Two doses.
Two.
To be given in?
The problem is you have to give in if you keep in the room temperature within 4 hours, or if you keep 2 to 8 degree, you can use second patient within 36, preferably written 48 hours, but preferably 36 hours.
One patient will need one dose.
Vial consists of 2 patient dose, 1200, required 600. So 2 patient can be given from 1 vial. But you require 2 patients simultaneously.
Total price is 1,30,000 for 2 patients.
60,000. Hello, yeah, Dr. Wander. Good afternoon. Can you?
Very good afternoon,
You
sir.
are muted,
Very good
please.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We are actually having this thing. Your session is next one. So. Hello.
Can I make my presentation, sir?
Yeah, of
Because-
course. Please give your comment or any question. Hello. You wanted to tell something, Dr. Wander?
No, sir. I just wanted to request you if my presentation can be done after this presentation. That was only a request, sir.
Oh, please wait for 20 minutes, sir. Is there any problem with, or just half an hour? Because what do you say, organizer? Yeah. Okay. We have only one presentation now. Then I will call you. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Professor Nandini Chatterjee, Professor of Medicine, Convener Scientific Committee, a 42-year-old diabetic female with COVID-19 followed by blood infusion. Professor Chatterjee, please.
এই বলছি যে কি ব্যাপার অনেক সেশন কি
লেট হয়ে গেছে অনেকটা লেট হয়ে গেছে 50 মিনিটস লেট হয়ে গেছে নন্দিনীটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি আরেকটা আছে
ম্যাডাম একটু ওখানে আছেন না
Sorry for the delay. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I'll be discussing about a devastating disease which has exploded on humanity during the COVID pandemic. I would start with a case illustration of a 42-year-old diabetic lady who presented to us after suffering from COVID-19. She had developed a blurring of vision in the left eye for the last 3 days, followed by dimness of vision. This was also accompanied with headache, a swollen, painful eye, and blocked nose. On examining the patient, we found that there was swelling in her face and left eye, along with ptosis, restriction of eye movements, loss of vision. She also had blackish discharge from the nasal cavity, However, her other systemic examinations were non-contributory. Her preliminary workup revealed a raised WBC count, and the inflammatory markers were also raised. One important finding was that she had uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. Her sugar levels were very high. There were no ketone bodies in her serum. On the background of COVID, along with the clinical presentation, so we went for an imaging study, contrast MRI of her orbit, sinuses, and brain, which revealed necrotic soft tissue lesions in left maxillary sinus, both ethmoids and cavernous sinus. There was also involvement of the left orbital apex and optic nerve. Debrided tissue was taken for microscopic examination and biopsy. With a KOH stain, it revealed wide accepted fungal hyphae with wide angle branching, and histopathology confirmed diagnosis of rhinoorbital mucormycosis. So mucormycosis, as you know, is a fungal infection caused by a ubiquitous mold which is found in the environment and abundant in soil as well as decaying organic matter. COVID-associated mucormycosis is a special entity which occurs in severe COVID-19 patients, especially who have comorbidities, and often occurs in the later part of the disease. It has been seen that there has been a doubling of the prevalence of mucormycosis in the COVID era, and India seems to dominate in this area with a prevalence around 70 times higher than the worldwide figures. It has been declared an epidemic by the government of India last year, and all states of the country have reported cases, though the highest frequencies have been reported from Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Haryana, and Madhya Pradesh. It has been seen that special subsets of patients are vulnerable to the disease. The most important being COVID-19 and uncontrolled hyperglycemia in a known case of diabetes or who are presenting for the first time. In most of the cases, it has been found that there was a history of high dose or long duration of steroid therapy or some kind of immunomodulatory drug. Prolonged ICU stay with invasive procedures being done, as well as the age-old causes of immunosuppression like transplantation, prolonged neutropenia, chronic renal disease, all these have been found. Now, the pathogenesis is actually a state of immune dysfunction where the polymorphonuclear cells are not functioning properly. There is defect in migration, phagocytosis, a hyperglycemic state, and acidosis seems to help in the fungi to spread by increasing or upregulating the GRP78 molecule, which is a mucorales receptor, and the iron sequestrating proteins seem to be glycated, leading to an abundance of free iron in the circulation, which is very favorite of the mucorales fungus. What are the types? The types are rhinoorbital cerebral mucormycosis or only rhinoorbital mucormycosis, which is very much abundant in the post-COVID patients, pulmonary mucormycosis, gastrointestinal, cutaneous, isolated renal, or disseminated varieties have all been reported. But I must stress that in COVID patient, the rhinoorbital or rhinoorbital cerebral mucormycosis is the predominant variety. So presentation in COVID-associated mucormycosis, as I was saying, usually the mucormycosis presents within 4 to 6 weeks of the COVID infection. Sometimes it may even be concomitant with the infection itself. How do they present? They may come with nasal blockade. There may be a purulent, bloody, brownish or blackish discharge from the nares, facial pain and numbness, eye pain, proptosis, even loosening of teeth, maxillary teeth are coming off. There may be fever, blackish lesions in the skin or palate. Patient may come with a blurred vision or double vision, or if there is a CNS extension, patient may come with a altered sensorium. So the various presentations are pansinusitis, orbital cellulitis, cranial nerve palsies, cavernous sinus thrombosis, cerebral infarction, even hemorrhage. ROCM has been staged according to severity. If it is limited to the nasal mucosa or the sinuses, it's stage 1. If it is extending into the orbit, stage 2, and if there is an intracranial extension, then it is considered stage 3. Pulmonary mucormycosis, some cases of which have also been found in our COVID patients, present like any other pneumonia actually, fever, cough, chest pain, hemoptysis, etc. But you may have to suspect it when a COVID patient who is more or less stabilizing may suddenly have a worsening of the respiratory symptoms. And you must also take into account that whether this patient is on a prolonged oxygen therapy or on prolonged mechanical ventilation. In this context, I would like to state some retrospective data collected from around 263 patients in between May and August 2021. It was seen that males were predominantly affected, with an average age being around 50 years. However, the most important predisposing factor, as I have already mentioned, that they were diabetic in 77.9% of the cases. In almost 60% of the cases, there was history of steroid therapy. They hailed from each and every district of West Bengal. However, North Chobbish Pargana, Kolkata, Jalpaiguri, Darjeeling and Hooghly, they sent in more patients, it seems. COVID-associated mucormycosis accounted for around 75% of the patients. And as I have mentioned, rhinoorbital and rhinoorbital cerebral mucormycosis exclusively dominated these batch of patients. All these patients received amphotericin B deoxycholate, which is the form of amphotericin B available in our setups. And there were many adverse events, commonest being hypokalemia and acute renal injury. About 16.7% patients were discharged after recovery, and in-hospital deaths were around 26% of the patients. Here I must comment that this figure is much lesser than the national average of around 33% death or mortality. Now, what I must state here is that this is a in-hospital data, and long-term follow-up was not done for most of the patients. Moreover, most of the patients were suffering from rhinoorbital variety, which has a better prognosis, and they also received combination therapy, which may be the cause, or simply a reporting bias may have come into play to give this figure. So how do we diagnose rhinoorbital cerebral mucormycosis? We go for imaging, contrast MRI of the sinuses, orbit and brain, and we go for microscopic examination, culture, histopathology, and if available, molecular diagnosis from the debrided tissue or necrotic tissue in the nasal cavity or sinus. Now, this picture depicts the microscopic appearance of the fungal hyphae, which are aseptate, ribbon-like and broad, with branching in wide angles. This must be differentiated from the picture of aspergillosis, where the filaments are narrower, they have septations, and the angles are acute angles. How to confirm? Well, confirmation is done by histopathology, which remains the mainstay of diagnosis because culture results are tricky. It is positive in only 35 to 50% of cases. So we rely mostly on histopathology for confirmation. Histopathologic hallmarks are tissue invasion by fungal hyphae, angioinvasion, thrombosis, tissue infarction and necrosis, and perineural invasion. For pulmonary mucormycosis, we may have to examine the sputum or fluid of bronchoalveolar lavage. We can take, or we have to take biopsy. It could be bronchoscopic or CT guided from lung lesions. Now, the ethnicity findings of pulmonary mucormycosis are various types are seen. There may be nodular shadows. More than 10 is usually found in mucor. There may be pleural effusion, thick walled cavities, and a particular sign, the reverse halo sign, may not be found in each and every case, but there a ground glass area may be surrounded by consolidation rim. To differentiate it from aspergillosis, a test called the galactomannan and beta D glucan test is performed, which is negative in case of mucormycosis. So how to treat these patients? Number one and most important is that one has to control hyperglycemia. One has to taper off steroids and discontinue steroid or any immunomodulatory drug that the patient is receiving. The drugs which are effective against this fungus are liposomal amphotericin B, amphotericin B deoxycholate, amphotericin B lipid complex. Also certain azoles like posaconazole or isovuconazole are effective, but studies have shown that these are not as efficacious as amphotericin B. Now, I will not go into the details of infusion, but one thing I must stress is that the liposomal amphotericin B has much less adverse events, and the percentage of acute renal injury also is much lesser in this case. Only problem is it is very expensive. So often we had to make do with amphotericin deoxycholate, which again had many problems. We had to monitor the levels of potassium, magnesium, and the renal function. This therapy goes on for 4 to 6 weeks, which is a long period. So monitoring of patients is very, very important. After 4 to 6 weeks, we step down to another drug, that is the azole, posaconazole, or isovuconazole, which are oral or IV preparations are available. So we go on to the oral drug, and this may continue for another 3 to 6 months. Now, the adverse events may be infusion related or acute, like chills and fever, vomiting, hypotension, or even hypertensive episodes have been documented. Chronic problems that are very, very frequent in case of deoxycholate are hypokalemia, acute renal injury, hypomagnesemia, and some abnormalities in the blood picture. Monitoring of the patients should go on to note how he or she is responding to therapy, and the treatment duration often needs to be individualized. Now, only medical therapy is not enough, and we need to also debride extensively and remove all necrotic tissue, which may be done both endoscopically or surgically. If needed, we may also have to extenterate the eye or do maxillectomy, or if a localized lung lesion is there, you may also have to remove a part of the lung. Patients who are intolerant to amphotericin B may receive the azoles. So to summarize, since you have already heard how devastating a disease mucormycosis is, the best way is to prevent it. And for prevention, a COVID-19 patient should have a very strict glycemic control. Rational and optimal use of steroids is very, very important. While steroid therapy is going on, closely monitor blood sugar and for signs of secondary infections. No antifungal prophylaxis is recommended. And when a patient of COVID-19 is being discharged, he has to be told to do self-examination and look for signs and symptoms which may recognize early onset of mucormycosis and immediately report to a medical personnel. These are my references, and I acknowledge the Department of Health and Family Welfare, Government of West Bengal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Nandini. I have one question. I have one question. Actually, we have treated mucormycosis, COVID-related mucormycosis cases almost 6 months, nearly 6 months. Now we are thinking going to stop the therapy. Some patients going to stop therapy because there is no specific guideline
Yes.
regarding the stoppage of therapy. So how you are monitoring? We people like monitor our patient both clinically, laboratory and radiological supportive.
Yes, post-COVID mucormycosis is a new entity, and actually nobody knows much about what these patients are going to land up with. Going through literature, the one thing that has been written is that therapy should be individualized. The drugs have been given to us, but what to do once we have achieved the duration which is given and the patient is still not improving, it is actually not given in any guideline. And it should be the discretion of the treating physician to decide what to do or what not.
Thank you, all the speakers, and I close
I
this
request
session.
Dr. Tanuka and Dr. Aditya, please hand over memento to Chairperson.